Wednesday even.
Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review evening briefing with me, Jonny McFarlane. I'm hosting today as both Derek and Joshua, the lucky buggers, are out in Amsterdam. Now you can see Derek is already on the hard stuff. He is on the Duvel. Now, Derek, are you aware of how strong that beer is?
Let me see here.
I think it's 8.6%.
Oof, 8.5 did not.
Jonny, that's a bold beer choice for a man who had. What did Derek have when he went to Belgium? Was it Heineken?
It was Heineken or something like that.
Oh.
Now, let me tell you, Derek, last time I was in Amsterdam, I drank 6 of those, and I had a bad experience. Let's just put it that way. So, let's not go into any further detail, lest I have flashbacks.
Stop off.
You want to be careful with that stuff. It's terrific, but it's deadly. Right, let's have a quick chat. Guys, just in terms of the comments, I want to know what you want to see the boys eating in Amsterdam. What do you want them to be eating? Do you want them to be eating pancakes? Do you want them to be eating Dutch specialities? If you've got any advice, chuck it in there and I'll get them to post on social media them eating some delectable Dutch treats. Because I, for one, I'm bored. I'm sitting back here in not so sunny Glasgow. Well, it's been quite sunny today, to be fair, and I'm keen to live vicariously through these two. So let us know in the comments. Some great comments already coming in. Raw herring, boys. I think that's one for Derek. Joshua, I don't know if he could handle that, to be honest. There's some filthy messages coming in. If we had this at 9 p.m, I could maybe...
Luckily I can't see them because I'm on my phone, so I'll leave them to
listen,
you.
Raw herring is absolute class. Had that many a time.
I like it too. Some people saying shark fin soup. Someone's saying space cakes. Guys, I think that's a bit dodgy for us to be getting involved in. Derek did mention that we could do some live space cakes. I said no. I think we want to keep clear of that. You talk enough rubbish as it is without starting on those. Right, but keep those ideas coming in, and we will keep referring back to that as the show goes on. So we've got a lot to talk about, not least how you boys got here. So first of all, Joshua, give us an update on how you arrived in Amsterdam and how early in the morning you had to get out of your kit.
Yeah, it's been a long one. Trying to, get an affordable way here when the flight companies are such thieves and set the prices up on the day you're going for it.
I'd just like to point out that that's Josh's opinion, not a fact.
Yeah. And not of that of the Rangers Review.
Yeah, well. So I got up at 2:30 this morning, and I went to Edinburgh Airport, flew to Eindhoven, got the train up to Amsterdam, then I had to get to my hotel, which is as normal with me. I've booked it in a stupid area. So just a normal day travelling for me, and it's been long, but happy to be here. And when I went to Eindhoven, I flew to Amsterdam, and when I've come to Amsterdam, I've flown to Eindhoven. So that shows you that someone needs to book my trips for me, Jonny.
And you, Derek, how did you get on in terms of arriving here from the north of England?
It was an early start for me, up at 3 in the morning, little short trip to Liverpool, John Lennon Airport. Easy peasy, flight to Amsterdam. From there, Schiphol Airport's fantastic, by the way, if you've been there, but it's the biggest airport, I think, in the world. We're taxiing for a fair bit. Once we get off, easy peasy onto a bus and straight to the hotel. And then from there, we just dumped the bag off. And then if you watched our YouTube channel, folks, you've seen I've just hot-footed it over to the Johan Cruyff Arena, as it's now known. Done a little stadium tour, which was great. Had a wee look at where Rangers are going to play on Wednesday night. And yeah, tidy little ground. Not quite Ibrox, Jonny, but it's a class stadium. And then from there, just headed back into the centre of the city. Had a great chat with Chris here, a Rangers fan. He lives in Amsterdam. You'll see that on our YouTube channel as well. So yeah, it's been a cracking day all round.
Yeah, and Derek, there's a lot of people that have been getting in touch with the various Rangers Review social media channels today to I think that the safe way to say it is that they're registering discontent that you're actually there, given your record as a bogey in terms of Rangers' chances. Wherever you go, there is destruction and horror that follows. So I suppose the good news is Josh has the opposite.
Yeah, I'll balance it out. I'll even it out.
So yin and yang.
Derek's record's what, 7-1? Is it, Derek?
1 draw and 60 defeats, I think, is my record. So, although if we're counting the Europa League final, are we counting that as a defeat? If we're counting it as a defeat, yeah, it's 6 defeats and 1 draw.
Yeah, that is fairly brutal.
So not the best.
The two forces of light and darkness are coming together, and that probably means it's going to be a draw. Right, let's get stuck into some questions. We've done enough prattling on. Let's get stuck into the red meat. First of all, we're just going to have a quick chat about the Rangers-Celtic game, obviously, Old Firm derby that took place on Saturday. Josh has been delving deep into the stats around the game. So we'll cover that off for a little bit, and then we'll start taking some questions. So keep the questions coming, guys. I'll get through as many of them as I can, and we'll tuck right into some of those. In terms of the game, Joshua, you've now spent a fair bit of time getting stuck right into those figures. What stands out in terms of the numbers that are coming out from the game?
Well, I think firstly, and you obviously put this in your newsletter, it does feel this week, Jonny, and I'm sure that by the time Wednesday comes round, even being in Amsterdam, you get that kind of feel of a big Champions League game. It's hard, I think, probably for people to get up for this game right now, given the result of the weekend, and given Aberdeen on Saturdays so huge as well. In isolation, though, obviously Rangers' first Champions League game in 12 years is quite an occasion away here in Ajax. Guess that's a separate matter. Looking back at the game, I mean, we put a piece out today that looked at John McLaughlin's numbers. So his goal saved above average numbers. And what that does, it takes the expected goals, post-shot expected goals. So effectively, based on the quality of chance, not only that Celtic had, but they took, their shots. What should the goalkeeper have conceded? And he was at -2, which is, in a single game, is pretty huge for a goalkeeper. It's not to say that all the blame's on John McLaughlin, because Rangers switch off for 3 restarts and you give yourself, I just don't think, any chance at all. And the most mind-blowing thing to me, Jonny, was for the third goal, Tavernier and Goldson, in spite of the fact that it's happened twice, still go around and moan at one another. Celtic get a 3v2 out wide. I don't know if that's because Tavernier doesn't go out quickly because he's moaning at Goldson, and they manage to cut the ball back and score. So it's littered with mistakes. And you can obviously approach it from an angle that Celtic didn't go and create 6-7 expected goals against Rangers. But I think if you put the eye test on that game as well, there was only one team winning that. I think Rangers are completely dominated. They didn't offer anything offensively apart from Borna Barisic crosses onto the head of Cholak, which twice were close. So I think big questions. And again, in isolation, obviously away from building up to what is a huge game against Ajax, just again in isolation, the money that can be won from a Champions League game is so significant. Rangers obviously won away in the Netherlands just a couple of weeks ago. There is, I think, a lot of domestic questions to answer starting at the weekend for Rangers, and the team need to respond. But again, as you said in your piece today, Jonny, when it looked a bit dour at points last season, they tended to. So it'll be interesting to speak to the manager tomorrow to see what he has to say, and whether they can use this game to build momentum. I think it's all about domestic momentum as well, because I think a lot of people will be more confident of getting a positive result in Ajax compared to Aberdeen, which is a problem, has to be said. So yeah, lots obviously to delve into from the game. It's all on the website. The goalkeeping performance not great at all. You need, I think, if your team plays that badly and switches off that much, you need a standout goalkeeping performance to bail you out. And they just didn't have that. But they didn't have that anywhere. The pitch didn't have a midfielder to get them on a pitch, a forward to hold the ball up, an individual to grab the game and change it, even if that was a midfielder just kind of holding possession and building play. I think it was kind of lacking all over.
Yeah, go easy on that Duvel, Derek. Remember, 8.5%. No messing about with that one.
Don't you worry, I'm a big boy, Jonny.
Don't we know it, big man? So listen, let's talk Turkey, because on Twitter after the game, you were clearly a bit tired and emotional. I think you'd had a few of those Duvels, and you said that Celtic are light years ahead of Rangers. Now, I noticed that for once, you seem to get the agreement of the Celtic support with one of your tweets, which is quite remarkable considering the abuse you take on a day-to-day basis. Although I think there's a level of masochism in you doing it. I think you secretly like being called a Ginger Hamilton fan because you certainly seem to court some of that on there. But listen, in all seriousness, do you still stand by that? I don't agree with that. But
yeah,
where do you stand in the here and now, a couple of days after the game?
Listen, the point I'm trying to make is domestically, Celtic for me are streets ahead of Rangers at this point in time. I think if you're disagreeing with that, I can't see how you can possibly disagree with it. Celtic are steamrolling teams. They're 5 points ahead of Rangers. Look at their goal difference compared to Rangers. They're all, for me, I can't see how Rangers claw that back at this moment in time. Now, of course, they could do so, but early on in the season. However, I can't see Celtic dropping points to anyone. Can I see Rangers dropping points to other teams out with Celtic? Yes. We've just touched on Aberdeen away. That game's huge, bigger than Ajax for me. They need to show a reaction. They need to pick up 3 points in that game. But that aside, I just have my doubts that this Rangers team can claw back those 5 points and overtake Celtic. Celtic are a machine domestically. In Europe's a different story. We all know this. Rangers have punched above their weight for years now. In Europe, Celtic really have been poor on the continent. But the league is the bread and butter, and Rangers at the moment, for me, Jonny, are lacking in so many departments compared to Celtic. And that leads me, it's a depressing thought, but I can't see how, at this point in time, the transfer window's closed. Can they claw back that 5 points before the second Old Firm game? If it remains 5 points, I think I'll be quite content because I can see Rangers dropping points from here until then.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment based on the way Rangers have been approaching away games. I think the stat was 13 away games in 2022.
Yes,
of those 13, 7 have seen dropped points. I think it's 5 losses and 2 draws. Might be wrong on that. Can't actually 100% remember, but certainly of the 13 games, there's been dropped points in 7. So
not good enough.
Something needs to give on that. That's not good enough. And it's clear that if you're going to win domestic titles against Postecoglou's Celtic, you need a higher level of consistency. We know Rangers are capable of achieving and hitting very, very high levels and standards in terms of one-off games. And I think there was a number of prominent people on Twitter who said there is becoming this sense that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is something of a cup manager. When he was at Feyenoord, he was very successful in terms of the number of trophies, but there's only 1 league title in 4 years. There was significant, I think it was 4 cups. So, there's a concern based on his performance in cups versus the league, that might be, in terms of his tactical style, which is more reactionary than it is methodical, or in terms of it being a philosophy, that might be suited to his kind of style. And that's something he'll have to prove, because cup managers don't survive at Rangers in the long term.
No.
But I still obviously think it's far too early to be talking about Giovanni van Bronckhorst's future. The guy who just got the club to the Europa League final, has just qualified for the Champions League for the first time in 12 years. And in terms of Europe, the club is well and truly back on the European map as a giant, and I think that can't be overstated.
He's excelling in some metrics, Jonny, there's no doubt about it, but at the end of the day, Rangers want to be winning league titles, don't they? And how long do you give it without winning a league title? It's one of those ones. Champions League is absolutely sensational, of course it is. Europa League final is something you can only dream about. And of course he was successful in the Scottish Cup, but that's a big conundrum for supporters. Would you rather have a good European run and success in the Cups, or you want the league title back? And at the moment, they're just lagging behind for me in the title race.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, that was you're in good form, buddy. We should give you Duvel before you do videos. Maybe I need to let you be more.
Maybe they're watching. They can maybe sponsor the.
The show, listen, I'd love a sponsorship from Duvel, giving me a case of 48 bottles.
Top
Thank you.
Yes, please, guys. Yeah.
We'll just be paid in beer. So listen, let's get stuck into some of these comments that are coming in. Joe Anderson on this topic. I still think Rangers Celtic, there's not much in it. Not convinced they are world beaters, and there was nothing in the match until we started to lose the plot. It'll be closer for the rest of the season. Listen, I don't disagree with what Joe's saying to an extent. I thought Celtic were far better in terms of the eye test in that game. That said, 4 goals, 4 questionable bits of goalkeeping, I would say. Other than that, Celtic didn't really create that many chances. You know, we've got Giacomakis, can't get on the end of a header in the first half. But that apart, I don't think there was that many times Celtic carved Rangers open. It was a bit of a freak game. And I think we can say that without trying to soft soap the fact that Celtic were far better and it was very concerning. In some ways, I think it was one of those that if you go and you have a really good goalkeeping performance, you get out of there with a 0-0 draw and say it's a good result. And I've said this a few times, but I'm going to say it again. You know, I grew up with very, very good Rangers sides going to Parkhead and taking a shellacking, but coming out with a decent result because Andy Gorham was absolutely outstanding in the goal. So sometimes you just need that. Parkhead is a difficult place to go.
But Jonny, those Walter teams, everyone was switched on, and it was defensive performances back to the wall at times, but everyone was switched on at throw-ins. Nobody was complaining to referees that the decision wasn't going their way. That was a big difference, I think, on Saturday. Too much complaining towards Nick Walsh.
100% agree, Derek, and that cannot be dismissed. That point is very pertinent. Why that they weren't awake to this problem? They're well aware the way Celtic don't ever give you a moment's peace. We've seen that in previous games. And they actually dealt with it in the Scottish Cup. And they dealt with it at Parkhead the last time. So why they didn't for this one, why they fell asleep, I don't know. But I'm sure that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will be repeating these things. I know he will be in the dressing room because I think he'll be as perplexed by it as we are. James Tony comes on saying Gio's style is murdering us in Scotland. It's possession, negative, boring, defensive, slow crap. His away record is going to get him the sack. I think players are not responding to his style. Joshua, in terms of the pace of the play, Derek did an interview which I know has got a bit of traction recently, way back when Giovanni Van Bronckhorst first arrived, with a Feyenoord fan, prominent Feyenoord podcaster, who said, you know, the problem with Gio, he doesn't really have a philosophy. He tends to play in this style where it goes in a horseshoe shape, left back to centre back to centre back to right back to winger and back and back and back. And I noticed people were sort of saying, yeah, this is something that we're now seeing in terms of the way Rangers are playing. Do you think this sort of slow pace is a serious issue domestically? And do you think that's fair comment in terms of stepping it up a little bit the way Celtic do? You know, they get games done and dusted within 30 minutes.
Well, I think there's an element of reality in that Rangers couldn't go and do what they did in the Europa League if not for... I think it's unfair to call Van Bronckhorst pragmatic, but I think what he excels in his time at Rangers, and obviously I've not watched lots of Feyenoord in kind of 2016, 2017, what he has excelled in at Rangers for me is managing to tailor the strengths of his team to opposition weaknesses. And I think the difficulty is domestically, when you go away to Hibs, when you're playing at home against Kilmarnock, the tempo of the game has to be created by the side in possession, normally, which is Rangers. And I don't think that you're saying there, Jonny, I don't think Celtic created that much more against Rangers. But I think for me, what was the kind of notable difference is when they got the ball in the attack in third, they know what to do so instinctively, and they have such rehearsed rhythms and patterns of play that I don't think Rangers have in the final third at all. How many times did they get the ball and cut back, or how many Rangers moves can you think of that were dangerous? In all honesty, not many whatsoever. So is the tempo a bit of a problem? I think so. We wrote about it after the Hibs game, looking at the chance creation numbers in the first half. Ultimately, I think that Rangers look like a better team building out from the back after summer, and I think that is sometimes as much of a problem as trying to beat the low block, as trying to get into the final third and build beyond pressure. It certainly was last season for Rangers. How many games did you have Connor Goldson and Calvin Bassey exchanging passes and just for so long? But I think it's probably a little bit more reliant on individualism, Van Bronckhorst in the final third. It's probably be fair to say. And the injury to Tom Lawrence is obviously a big blow. The right wing kind of question still remains open. We'll see what kind of Rabbi Matondo can do. I noticed you said on Twitter today that was an illness that kept him out
we'll go into that
over the weekend.
We'll go into that.
Yeah, I think sometimes with managers you can't have everything. Even look at someone like Guardiola and his inability to win the Champions League. Maybe there isn't a style that fits it all, and maybe Van Bronckhorst, the reason he excels, as I say, in Europe is because he can make these intelligent game plans and tailor his team's strength to opposition weaknesses, which I just don't think is as much of a possibility in the league. I still think we need a little bit more of a sample size after summer to see the effects of it. I think of the 7 players, the fact that none are on the pitch at the end of the Old Firm, there's extenuating circumstances that make it difficult for him probably to play exactly as he wants. Even you look at a player like Morelos not being ready really until the weekend. But on the surface of it, I'd kind of agree that I think there is variables within Rangers' game that they don't have that Celtic when they attack teams that come to them naturally. And I don't know if that's a product of the management, a squad refreshed, but it is noticeable when you watch it.
Okay, I'm going to give up trying to keep a thread, so we might be bouncing about all over the place, a little bit like Derek's brain once he has that second Duvel. Graham Brown says, thoughts, guys, Diego Costa is up for grabs. Could we afford his wages? I don't care what it costs. Bring him in. Just for the sheer... The entertainment value alone of Diego Costa and Willie Collum is worth all the money that he will demand. Bring the guy in, that's what I say.
He's training with Wolves, I think, isn't he?
I was surprised at that. I thought he was.
Listen, if he's training with Wolves, then I agree with you, Jonny. Get him up the road. Get him in the team.
I'm actually only joking.
Johnny, I was watching.
Get him up front of Morelos.
I was watching one of Ajax's. Watching a lot of Ajax today for a piece I'm doing tomorrow, and I can't remember which team it had, but it was Bas Dost up front, and I immediately thought of you. So he is in the Eredivisie. Not at
how did Bas Dost look?
He didn't get much of that. I think it was correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows in the comments, but it may well have been the Groningen game where Ajax won 6-1. We can maybe touch on them later a little bit about their style of play, what they're going to do.
I'm sure Bas Dost would have done a job for Rangers. I'm still sticking to that. But yeah, I mean, Diego Costa, in all seriousness, number one, he will cost a fortune. If he's training at Wolves and there's a potential to go to Wolves, he's going to be on a high wage potentially. He's only 33. But as you say, that the prospect of Morelos and Diego Costa up front, the most berserker front pairing in world football, would be tremendous, just from a point of view of entertainment value alone. Another one, a bit left field from Freddie Faulkner. Derek, I'm going to come to you on this, because I know you're based in the north of England. You will have a lot of colleagues down there who are well aware of Marcelo Bielsa, having seen his spell at Leeds. And Freddie Faulkner saying, I'd have Bielsa tomorrow, but I don't like being a club that chops and changes managers. Now, listen, there's absolutely no chance that Gio is going to be leaving. And I don't think, there's very little chance he's going to be leaving anytime soon. But Marcelo Bielsa at Ibrox, how would you react to that?
I think Joshua Barrie would absolutely love it if Bielsa. Imagine Bielsa popped up at Ibrox, he'd be beside himself. But listen, I think he's one of those. He's a right character in football. Loved, revered at Leeds United. Supporters I know that down there that covered Leeds United for a number of years, and they're still gutted he left. They love Jesse Marsch now, of course, but Bielsa, they totally bought into everything. His ideals, his philosophy, everything, you know it. Leeds United were a joy to watch at times. In the end, I think it was probably best for both parties that they parted ways. But listen, I think it's unfair that we're talking about other managers taking over. I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst deserves a bit of time. I think he's earned that with what he achieved last season and this season, getting into the Champions League. But I mentioned it before, and I mention it again. If the league is out of sight by the time that the Old Firm Ibrox match comes around at New Year, then it's a conversation I think that needs to be had. As hard as that that is. Rangers need to be winning league titles and need to get back into that title race as soon as possible. But I think it's too early to be talking about other managers taking over. However, in a parallel universe, Rangers are looking for a manager. I'd be having a conversation with Marcelo Bielsa, yes.
Josh, your one-word reaction to a parallel universe where Marcelo Bielsa is appointed Rangers manager?
Wow. Have to be wow.
You can see his little
the tactical
face.
pieces.
Just how excited he would find that.
I mean, obviously not a realistic conversation to have at all about the manager position, but I mean, I think the majority of clubs would want to have Marcelo Bielsa just for the fact that they've had Marcelo Bielsa. I mean, he's one of the innovative coaches of the last however many years. So, hope he's having a nice time off though. He looks a lot healthier having left Leeds, Derek, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would be excited at seeing whatever translator pitches up at Ibrox if he got the job as well. I think the translator was as famous as he was down in Leeds, especially. But
he was, wasn't
he? What a character he is! Yep.
So we've got Joe Anderson saying they're having too much fun in Amsterdam. Wait till the video stops, lads. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I'm going to go back and deal with an 8-month-old baby while these two are going to go off gallivanting around Amsterdam. I mean, it's a hard life being a football journalist.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do
it. Here's another one from James Glasgow. In my opinion, the board needs to start backing the manager. I think after last season, Gio deserves at least 2 first 11 players, which we have went out and spent cash on instead of trying to get free transfers. I think that's been a sentiment that's been going round, but I think the bottom part of that, I'm not sure that's 100% fair in terms of there has been significant fees spent, in terms of Ben Davis coming in, 3.5 million rising to up to 4.5. Ravi Matondo, I think, was around 2.5 million. You've got Yilmaz, who's going to be in the region 3.5 to 5 million, depending on if he hits the various triggers in his contract. And John Souttar and Tom Lawrence, these guys are coming in on free transfers, but you better believe they're going to be on big wages and there's going to be signing on fees. So I'm not 100% sure in terms of spending cash. And the one thing I think, you just look at someone like Tom Lawrence, right? He arrives on a free transfer, costs nothing. Ravi Matondo arrives, costs 2.5 million. It's not always about the money that you spend. It's about how you spend it, and that's always going to be the case in football. Rangers once went out and spent 12.5 million on Torre Andre Flo. And the spend does not guarantee quality. We see that all the time. There's a number of factors that go into whether a player hits the ground running. But where I do agree, I think Rangers need to try and find guys who can come in and really make an impact in that first team in terms of the recruitment in the summer. And if we get to a stage where we come to December, January, Yilmaz, Davies, Cholak, Lawrence haven't made the kind of impact that we'd hope, then I think there'll be legitimate questions to ask. I think the problem you've got on the 5th of September is, for me, Derek, I just think it's a little bit too early to be going studs up on a bunch of new signings that Rangers have deliberately gone out and got early because they wanted to make sure they were ready for these Champions League qualifiers. Now, Rangers could have staggered their business, and listen, they were criticised for doing that in the Malmo season when they went out. Now, what they did, and they went out and did it early this time, but it meant that there was a gap after reaching the Champions League, and the fans don't get that exciting moment. Now, contrary to that, I would say they got a very exciting moment in January on the last day with Aaron Ramsey. We thought it was pie in the sky. We didn't think it was going to happen. Then it turns out he is coming. Yeah. Then he signs. It went on all day. It was really, really exciting from a fan point of view, I think. But Aaron Ramsey ultimately, he was barely able to make an impact. When he did play, he was good, but he was in and he was out, and you couldn't really rely on him in terms of fitness. So you got that day of excitement, but it didn't. The transfer didn't work. I don't think I'm kind of being too controversial by saying that. So I suppose, is that day of kind of excitement and happiness worth that, or do you get the deals done early? I mean, say Rabi Matondo would come in on the last day of the transfer window.
It's perception, Jonny. The transfer deadline day is an event, and supporters want to see their club having a role to play on transfer deadline day. They want to see their name on that yellow ticker on Sky Sports, and have that bit of adrenaline rushing through their body when they see a player emerging from Glasgow Airport or wherever. But if you take that away, if Rangers say from talking sake bought Matondo and Lawrence in that final week between beating PSV and the window closing, then everybody wouldn't really have an issue. It's because it reached that point, they beat PSV, and fans were identifying two areas of the pitch that need strengthened: right wing and centre forward. And of course, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst said he was happy with the squad. He felt it was capable of battling on two fronts. And then Parkhead happened, and then understandably supporters are frustrated, and I don't blame them for that. Questions obviously been asked now: is the squad capable? And proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day. But on Saturday, showing that it's understandable why supporters have doubts. In terms of the players that have been brought in, I think you're right. It is too early to judge a lot of them. I think Cholak has hit the ground running. I felt the criticism of him early on was a bit OTT, and it's proved to be the case. I think he's certainly going to bag Rangers a lot of goals this season against teams that they struggle against, teams in the bottom half of the Scottish Premiership. I think Tillman's a top player, but I agree with Joshua. Right wing is not his position. Matondo, I think, is a project player. I think you've said that on record, Jonny. I tend to give him a bit of time just to. You need to remember, Scottish football is unlike any other football on the planet, so it's going to take him a bit of time to integrate. Tom Lawrence is a top player. I've said this before many a times. I think he was a big miss on Saturday. He would have revelled in that occasion at Parkhead, and Rangers certainly missed him. The likes of Ben Davis, John Souttar, we've not seen it. We can't judge them because we've not seen enough of them. Ridvan Yilmaz, I think, obviously Rangers are giving them time to integrate and settle into the team. I want to see this boy more. Of course, Borna Barisic has been a stable left back for many years now, so you can understand why he's been getting a nod in these European games and league fixtures of late. But I'd like to see more of Yilmaz now, I've got to be honest. Will he start on Wednesday? I'm not so sure, but with the outlay Rangers have spent on this guy, which is a lot of money, I want to see more of him.
One of these things that I want to see on these Champions League trips, guys, is whoever goes out, and I'll be going to Napoli with Derek and going down to Liverpool with Josh, but whoever's going on these trips brings back a sort of sense of what it's like to be out in that foreign country, what the atmosphere is like amongst the fans, what the city's like. And Chris McConnell's taking that a step further. He says, I want Derek out of his dial on shrooms, running about with his arms out, his jacket over his head, shouting that he's Johan Cruyff. And Chris has done absolutely brilliant here because he spelled Cruyff with the Dutch spelling, which shows that he knows his football. So
he's taken time over that comment, Chris.
He has taken his time.
Spell checked that.
I'll get a Facebook Live sorted a little later on. We can do a deep dive into proper Amsterdam, if you like.
Jonny, can I just say that
no,
Derek,
nothing that's illegal over here should be done over there. Derek
still to take up my offer of heady tennis that I gave at the fan zone at the final.
Yes, we wanted to get that filmed, and I completely forgot about that.
There was one participant up for it, and there was one participant not up for it.
Oh, hey,
you can decipher who's who. But we've got to have our FIFA game. Me and Derek have to have our heady tennis.
Maybe with them not oiled, Joshua. Maybe we'll have a bash at that. I don't think there's any fan parks in Amsterdam right enough, so never mind.
Sorry, that was someone trying to get into my door here. Just in case you're wondering why I'm turning around and going, I'm live. So we've got one here from Heather saying, Jonny, you need to pay for Josh's flights next time so the poor lad can fly direct from Glasgow to Amsterdam. If you saw the prices, Heather, you would understand why he's not.
You'd have flown to Eindhoven as well, Heather. I think it went up to about £500 the next morning.
Yeah,
something like that. It's crazy.
Listen, we've got a question here from Alan Stewart, Laurie Hall. He's saying, what happened to Ravi Matondo? He started pre-season well, cost West Ham and Spurs problems. I think he was particularly good in the West Ham game, to be honest. Is he just adjusting to playing against a low block and suited to European games now? Well, Alan, one of the things that has kind of gone missed from Saturday's game was that Rabbi Matondo wasn't involved in the squad because he had an illness. So he wasn't available for that game because of that. It wasn't that he was left out or wasn't selected by Gio on the basis of his play or anything like that. He was unwell and unable to take part. So that's why he wasn't involved. And I think Rabbi Matondo, there's clearly talent there. Listen, there's no doubt about it. Absolutely, the guy has got electric pace. He can go both ways. There is a player in there. I think for me, the problem is, based on what we've seen so far, is that he looks like a young man that's going to need to take some time to adapt to the environment, adapt to the size of the club, adapt to the style of football, and that may just take a bit of time. And fundamentally, the problem is at Rangers is you had a right-wing position there that's been needing a top-class injection for quite some time. Now, the manager rates Scott Wright. Of that, there's no doubt. You want Scott Wright as part of the squad. I don't think perhaps he's rated as highly amongst the three of us here as Giovanni Van Bronckhorst rates him. But
I thought he was very good against Ross County.
I'd play him on Wednesday.
I wouldn't, but I think it's just an example of sometimes that one player becomes a little bit of a scapegoat, even though he, I think at times you can see his end quality is a little bit inconsistent. But I thought against Ross County, what they've, I think, clearly done with him is tailored what he's doing when he gets into the final third, because all he did really was cut the ball back. And eventually, obviously, cuts the ball back for Cholak. But I think he'd actually cut the ball back 4 times before then. From people I've spoken to, I think Scott Wright is one of these players who's maybe still in the process of replicating on the pitch where he replicates in training. But you're right that Van Bronckhorst wouldn't have picked him so regularly if he didn't like what he brought to the team. But the reality is as well, Jonny, you look at someone like Leo Labada at Celtic, he's already scored 6 goals this season. Rangers need players in and around the forwards area to score goals, and I think Lawrence and Tillman will provide you that. Kent obviously doesn't. I think that's sometimes the level you've got to look to. It's not, is he good enough to maybe get in a team? It's how is he going to, a player in that position, ensure that Rangers are kind of uncatchable in the league.
Listen, let's talk about Connor Goldson, because I've seen a lot of criticism aimed in his direction. Derek, I want to get your opinion on this. Matt Gunner coming in saying Goldson doesn't get into our starting 11 if all are fit. Now, certainly, if people are coming back into fitness, you've got a really, really big strength and depth there at centre-half in terms of Helander, Davies, obviously you've got Goldson himself, you've got Suter, you've got James Sands. So there's lots of quality in there. Leon King as well. But for me, Connor Goldson plays every week, and I'm kind of struggling. I don't know if I've missed something. I don't think he's been playing that badly. I don't think he's been outstanding this season. But I do notice a lot of people are now talking about this. Is this something that I'm missing? What do you think of Connor Goldson since he signed this new deal?
He's not been vintage at his best. I think he'd be the first to put his hand up and say he hasn't started the season as well as he could have done. But I think he's not the only one. I don't think James Tavernier has started that well. I know he scored against Livingston at the start of the season, but domestically, I think there's just he's not at his best. James Sands, I think, has been the standout performer at the back, but I still have my doubts about his physicality and whether that is his long-term position at the back. Bonnet Barisic, as we mentioned, I think he's been steady enough, but when you spend a lot of money in Ridvan Yilmaz, then he's got to play at some point. So I think everyone in the back line, even the goalkeeper, should be concerned about their position based on how Rangers have started domestically. Goldson, though, has been a constant performer, Jonny, for since Gerrard came in. What's that? We're now in his 5th season. I don't suspect he'll be dropped anytime soon. Rangers don't have the personnel there at the moment. We're talking about Suter, Davis, and Hollander's been out long term. Who knows when he's going to be back? So unless these guys are champing at the bit, trying to get a place in the team, then Connor Goldson's going to play every week. I think he's one of the first names in the team sheet. Even though if he's out of form at the moment, I don't think he's, let us say, firing all cylinders. He's still one of the players that you put in there, not just for his on-ball performance, but off the ball as well. He's such a commanding figure. You hear his teammates talk about it as well, talking them through games. James Sands talked about it recently, how He helps him through games a lot. So I think it's not really a discussion that Goldson would be dropped. I would be amazed if he was dropped anytime soon. He's never
Before
been
I
dropped.
come to you on this, Josh, just going to have a word from our sponsors, Football Prizes. We have got a tremendous prize at the moment, which is a signed Stephen Davis top. It's got all the amazing lights around it to light it up in your room. It's perfect for a man cave. So it's his top from last season. It's signed, and it's got even a wee sort of video monitor on it where you can watch highlights, Rangers highlights. It's a terrific prize. Now, you can win that if you put £3.95 for a raffle ticket on the Football Prizes website. Now, that is, I put a link to it inside the comments there. So if you fancy putting your name in the hat, there's only a maximum of 200 tickets that go on sale. I don't think anywhere like that has been sold yet, and one of you will win that terrific prize, which would just look terrific. I think if you've got a wee bar in your house, you're fortunate enough to have a wee pool room or a wee kind of place where you watch the football, I think that would be terrific. Don't know how my wife would feel about that in this house, to be honest. I think I'd be getting told off. It would have to go behind me here in my office otherwise. But still looks absolutely terrific, and I think that one will be going to one lucky person indeed. So £3.95, you go in there and you have a chance to win. As I say, 200 tickets maximum, and then it stops and the winner is drawn. That is drawn on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. So give it a shot. Right, that's our word from our sponsors. We've had Derek's opinion. He's now gone to black. I think this is what happens when you have too many duels, Joshua.
I think that, to be honest, Jonny, Derek, because Derek's normally the host, I think he's maybe used up all his, he's peaked. He's had his time. We're 41 minutes in. He realizes what we have to do on a daily basis, and he's called it. Connor Goldson has not. I don't think he started the season brilliantly, apart from maybe some games in Europe. But the conversation of dropping him, I think it becomes difficult because only if a player is wildly out of form, I think you do that. When someone like Goldson is having here plays every game, and the expectation is that I'm sure their training plan and everything is tailored towards the fact that they play every game because the manager obviously thinks they're of that quality, and they've done it consistently. But what you would say is him and Tavernier, they need to cut out that again for that third goal at the weekend when they're blaming one another or disagreeing. I think it was because Goldson hadn't played the ball to Tavernier up the line, played it into Davis, who played it into Lundstrom in the middle, and the ball was lost, and it eventually turned over. Jota had the shot that McLaughlin saved. I think that type of thing just needs to be cut out. You just can't have that, and especially as the leaders in the team, I think they probably need to improve in that regard. I also don't think his distribution's been quite as good. The Rangers are playing those long balls, those long diagonals less. Here he comes. But no, I don't think the conversation of dropping him is realistic. And who plays there anyway? I mean, you need a right-footed centre-back. I don't see anyone that goes in and plays there. But I agree. I mean, I think James Sands for one of the goals probably lost the Bada. Although I think if you look at the analysis we did on the site, Barisic was on his heels for the first goal. Celtic clearly targeted that back post with crosses and intelligent movement to try and disrupt that. I don't think Sands is, especially in kind of chaotic games like that, I don't think he's done enough to justify the fact that he was at fault for that. Although obviously individually as a defender, when you concede 4 goals, you have to take the kind of responsibility as well. But yeah, I don't think if you drop them, who comes in tomorrow? You've only got Leon King, who's done well, but you're going to drop Sands or Goldson for an 18-year-old. I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah, I'm amazed at some of the comments coming in about Connor Goldson, to be honest. There's a lot of anger, I think, out there about his performances. I think Connor Goldson's one of those players that when he's not there, you would really notice it. I have to say,
Johnny, there's no. I say there's no. Who do you bring in? Like what Joshua says, you bring Leon King in. You're not going to do that, are you? If you've got an outstanding candidate that deserves an opportunity ahead of him, then fair enough. But there's no one.
Yeah, got a message here from Richard Allen saying, Johnny, I saw you in Carnoustie one Sunday morning by the beach. I am from God. He told me you were around, then you should up. Believe in Jesus. He's actually not lying. He did see me in Carnoustie because I was there very, very recently and I was at the beach. So There you go, folks.
Nice.
A message from the man upstairs. If that's
Are you in your trunks, Johnny?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't unleash that on the populace of a tidy little Tayside Angus town. I think that would be a little bit too much for them. So I didn't do that.
Johnny, can we speak about who would play on Wednesday? Because when I was putting my teams in, I don't think there's many changes you make defence and midfield, but up top, I'd be tempted to take 3 or 4 players out, because I think a performance of that, a result of that significance merits some change in the squads. But the only real area you've got a lot of rotation options for me is kind of at those front 4 positions.
Yeah, Derek, what's your take on
that? I'm changing the goalkeeper. And I've been a John McLaughlin, I was going to say fanboy, up until Parkhead. Just feel that performance, anywhere else in the pitch, you'd see the player drop out. Listen, he might play against Ajax, and I don't think Alan McGregor is the long-term answer as well, but do you play Robbie McCrory? I'm not necessarily sure you do, but I think there'll be a change in goal. I don't think there'll be a change in the back line or the midfield, but I think there'll be changes up top. I can absolutely see Alfredo Morelos leading the line, and I can see Scott Wright coming in on the right-hand side. I don't think Ryan Kent can have any complaints if he finds himself on the bench. So I think there's going to be changes, Joshua says, up top, certainly, and goalkeeper. I think that's a big call for the manager to make. I think Alan McGregor's going to come in for that one.
The difficulty you have with that, though...
But Billy Butler's saying, be careful with that drink, Derek. I've had a couple, and I was anybody's for a quid. Sorry, Josh, come on.
I was just going to say, the difficulty you have with... I don't think the goalkeeper changes, because Rangers have clearly, for pre-season, worked on building out from the back, and that didn't work at the weekend when McLaughlin passes into David Turnbull, but largely it has, and I think it's important. It was really important against PSV, for example. Do Rangers then abandon all that and go with the goalkeeper and Alan McGregor, who isn't as good with his feet at? And you can say, yes, he's maybe a better shot stopper, but the reality is as well, everyone saw that McGregor last season, there was a clear regression from the season before. And that's not really a criticism, because he is, he's going to be 41 this.
He played in all the European games, so that's his argument.
Josh, I'm going to step in here on this one and just put something to you.
Right.
This is Glasgow Rangers. You cannot have that kind of performance and play the next week.
No, you can't.
But then, I think that it's forged on kind of playing standards and winning things. And I'm not saying that John McLaughlin's done, but
no.
I don't know how you can have that kind of performance and expect if he isn't dropped, then I would say, well, what would you have to do to get dropped? You're talking about statistically. He was a -2 for the game in terms of expected goals conceded. What's the stat?
It's goal saved above average.
Goal saved above average. So which means that he let in two full goals less than he would be expected to let in normally. I just think in that size of game, I just don't think you can get away with it. And listen, it was all our fears about John McLaughlin come true. Forget the 4th goal. That can happen. That can happen.
Yeah, I'm discounting that as well, Johnny. They see that in the Premier League every week. So
yeah, it can happen to the best of them. But all 3 of the other goals just smacked of a keeper that's not very good at shot stopping to me. Again, we can talk about Jota. I talked about it on Jota's finish. 0.07 expected goals. Jota would be expected to score from that position 7% of the time. Okay, you say, but what about that exquisite finish? I take that on board. But even with the shot, the post-shot XG was 0.29. So the keeper is still expected to save that 66% of the time with that tremendous finish. So for me, yes, it was a good finish, but to me, the keeper's got to do
71%, is it not? 29. I'm not that tired, am I? 29, 71. You said 66.
Yeah, sorry, 71.
I thought I might.
Poor math. I didn't even get higher maths. Nobody will be surprised to know.
Neither did I, Johnny. So no, and look where we are now.
It's late. I've been looking after my child all day. It's been stressful.
Jonny, see, the issue with that, though, is that this is the exact conversation that people were having last year about Al McGregor. They were saying, bring John McLaughlin in, because he commands his area when Al McGregor doesn't, and he's better with the ball at his feet.
Yeah.
And if there is a situation this year where Rangers have to chop and change their number one, and or John McLaughlin plays and he provides stuff in possession and he commands his area, but he isn't a great shot stopper, because you're right, probably 3 out of 3 goals, I think you definitely expect your number one to do better. Then that, I think, is a recruitment failing, because Rangers, that was then an area that they needed to address. John McLaughlin hasn't, I think, played enough football consistently probably prior to this season that you could get a real gauge of how he does in a variety of different games. I know he played the 8 games. I think it was 8 games at the start of the 55 season, where Rangers didn't concede for 7 of them until they went away to Hibs. But if that is the case, then I do think it's a failing, because, again, it's just this conversation from last season flipped on its head when the number one position was an issue.
Yeah, I think I need to address this. Ian Thompson, he's absolutely spot on. You've changed your tune. It was only a few short weeks ago you said we're comfortable in the goalkeeping position. I did.
Listen, and I said it as well.
I really felt like that I was very consistent on Alan McGregor. I didn't think Alan McGregor should have got a contract. I thought it was the perfect time, the perfect send-off. And at that point, you've got McCrory and McLaughlin. And I said on this video at the time that I felt like you give them a chance, you give them to January, and if you need to go to the market, you're ready to strike for a keeper if it's not worked out. I think there was other areas that Rangers needed to put a decent amount of finance in, so I felt like the goalkeeping position was fine. But I think you have to be reactive, and you have to react to a situation like that by dropping a player who's had a clanger. I just believe that you absolutely have to go back to a player and say, if you've given a level of performance that is poor, there needs to be that threat there. And for me, it was so poor in the game that there had to be a change made. Now, listen, I get what Josh is saying. I totally understand that about the build-up.
What happens though, Jonny, if on Wednesday Al McGregor has a bad game? Do Rangers then just kind of chop and change relentlessly? And this is probably, again, I think we need maybe a little bit more of a kind of sample size to say this definitively, but it's probably a case of that Rangers should have addressed this in the summer. And I think everyone with McLaughlin felt that he'd be good enough, but that performance on Saturday, it wasn't good enough at all, and it didn't make a difference when Rangers, they needed a goalkeeper to really bail them out. As I said earlier, with a number of other positions it didn't.
But it's also, Joshua, important to say that this is not just Jonny McFarlane given his eye test. I'm also coming at this with the numbers that you've provided, and I had a look at myself at the goal saved above average. There's only one keeper in Scotland that's got a worse goal saved above average. So he's the second worst goalkeeper in Scotland at the moment based on the statistics. And the goalkeeper below him is the Dundee United goalkeeper that let in 9 goals against Celtic, which would completely skew, you would imagine, his numbers, because losing that amount of goals in that game,
It's a fair point, and again...
And just one more thing, Josh, just one more thing. Alan McGregor was criticised last season, right? Yeah. His goal saved above average was actually exactly the same as Joe Hart's. So that was Alan McGregor's lowest kind of baseline. The fact that he was just, I think, what was it, 0.1 or something like that, goal saved above average?
No, I think he was about 1. The season before he was 5.2 when he had that kind of remarkable season. But then I guess you've got to consider other things like the corner against Hearts and the 1-1 draw. That doesn't come into the goal saved above average.
Yeah.
But it is him costing a goal. So I don't think it's an ideal situation to have at all for Rangers to be going into. But and McLaughlin, I guess you look at PSV away, when we were all saying on the video after, this is a bit of a kind of defining performance for him, because he made big saves, he commanded his area, he made that strong stop with his right hand. Maybe there is an argument to say they had one bad game and everyone's going to have a bad game, and it'll be intriguing to see what the manager does. But I think McLaughlin will start on Wednesday. But if, as you say, looking at the numbers, looking at that performance, that's a sign of things to come, then I think it'll be hard to argue that Rangers shouldn't have addressed that in the summer.
Just one last wee topic on the sort of transfer situation, bringing in players. Again, Alan Stewart, Laurie Hill, are you concerned or surprised that we haven't brought in any Dutch players or players from the coaches past? Such players who played under Gio or players that Dave Voss knows for Ajax Academy. I'm surprised only players who Gio may have come across as Matondo when they were together at Man City. And I know Giovanni Van Bronckhorst did know Matondo from his time at Man City.
Sands as well.
He did say that
from the City group.
Sands, from his wide-ranging role with the City group, it wasn't just Man City. I think there was a lot of talk about a couple of Dutch players that might have been targets.
I think Jonny, Rangers have got a director of football, don't they? So modern clubs trust the director of football to identify these players at the end of the day. So that may be why there isn't as many Dutch players there. When Dick Advocaat took over Rangers, Rangers were in a different field, different organisation where he had free reign, basically, who he brought in, and that's why we've seen the likes of Arthur Newman, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst come in, Michael Moles came in, Bert Konterman, of course, Ronald de Boer, players that he knew from Holland, whereas now Ross Wilson is the man entrusted with the targets and the signings, isn't he? So I think that's possibly the reason why we've not seen more Dutch or any Dutch players come in.
I have to say I was a little bit surprised because, for example, across the city with Ange Postecoglou, he has that understanding and knowledge of the Japanese league, so he goes and plucks up some bargains. I was expecting Gio to be able to do that from Dutch football, and there'd be players that he would perhaps know. And I know football's changed a little bit since Dick Advocaat, but Advocaat obviously did that very effectively with Gio himself. Michael Malls, Arthur Newman.
I think the game's moved on.
To a lesser extent, but he was still an effective player over the term. Listen, guys, we've talked a lot, and there's obviously a lot of negativity, which is totally understandable. You can't be happy clappy after a result like that. It's impossible. There has to be a level of criticism, regardless. The board are getting a lot of stick. That's totally understandable. The board have taken Rangers from the Championship to the Champions League in 6 years. I think they've done a lot of good things, but there's also been a couple of issues over the last year or so, and there's been criticism over the lack of spending. I think that's totally fair too, in terms of the expectation level, and perhaps the expectation level in terms of the spending on the back of the 40 million bonanza that would be received from the Champions League, which is not an accurate figure. And we've had detail on the Rangers review about how that figure is. It really is high in the sky. It's far less than that. You're probably looking more in the region of 18, 19 million guaranteed. Rangers have a really, really good run at the Champions League. They can get it up to that 40 million, but you're talking about major success to do that. Of course, I think it's 2.6 or 2.8 million euros per win. So if you start racking up the wins, you can pretty quickly make a really, really good living out of the Champions League. But that's a tough situation when you've got Liverpool, Napoli, and Ajax in your group. But in terms of positivity and looking ahead, we've seen that Rangers have problems domestically. We've seen that against Hibs. We've seen it against Celtic. But we're talking about the Champions League. We're talking about Europe. That's why you guys are out there in Amsterdam. So I suppose what I would say, Derek, is as the twilight comes in there, I can see it's getting a little bit darker with you both. So we're going to call it a day shortly. But give us a sort of a stirring Churchillian speech that's going to rally the troops to understand and get back on board about why Rangers can make their comeback starting Wednesday. The rebirth begins in Amsterdam. Why?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Pataudry because I think that's going to be a challenge for Rangers. We know how tough it's going to be. They always raise their game against Rangers at Pataudry, but Rangers in Europe are a different animal. They've raised their game now. I say raised their game, but they've beaten the best. They've taken on the best in Europe over the last not just last season, Jonny. Over the course of the last 4 seasons, from the embarrassment in Luxembourg, they've went on a run that we could only dream of, culminating in that night in Seville, which is will live with many Rangers supporters for the rest of their lives. Of course, I know the result never went our way, but we took it all the way, to, which is remarkable for this group of players. And I trust this group of players to get a result on Wednesday. I would not be surprised for Rangers to come away with all 3 points on Wednesday. It would not surprise me in the slightest, because we know they're capable. They've just beaten PSV, a top side in the Eredivisie, a side that ran Ajax all the way last season. They've got some top players in their team. Ajax have spent a considerable amount of money. They've brought in money that Rangers can only dream of, but I expect this Rangers team to match up with them on Wednesday night and get their Champions League campaign off to a positive result. I know Saturday was an absolute embarrassment. It was a howler from all concerned, but in Europe, it's a different story. So I'm confident they can come away with a positive result from the Johan Cruyff Arena.
Get this man in as Prime Minister. That's about as Churchillian as you can get. Fabulous, Derek. That's what 2 Duvels can get you. Dale giving you both some terrific advice, lads. I want you to take this on board. He's saying, keep your clothes on, Derek. Josh, if you can make sure he abides by that, I think that's key at this stage. When you've had 2 hours sleep and you're on the Duvels, you need to really think about that. Blue Drew says, is Derek under the influence? Yes, I think he is. And finally, 555 the Wolf says, and this is a bit of comedy to round us off, Ajax and Napoli are top of their leagues, but Liverpool are mints though.
Listen, I fancy Rangers getting a result against Liverpool. If Crystal Palace can get a result against Liverpool,
Johnny's definitely under the influence now, isn't he?
If Fulham can get Fulham, have you seen Fulham? If Fulham can get a result against Liverpool, Rangers can get a result against Liverpool.
Yeah, you know what, Josh? Derek has been, since this draw was made, insanely confident with nothing to back it up about.
Listen,
Liverpool.
Jonny, I was, my next door neighbour is a massive Liverpool fan. We're at his 60th birthday on Saturday, and he is not looking forward to this Rangers doubleheader. He thinks Rangers are going to take points off Liverpool. So there you go.
Oofed, the drink is kicking in now. Derek says Ian Thompson. And I think he's possibly correct. So I think it's time to draw this to a close after an hour before these boys either fall asleep or start slurring their words. So thank you very much for everyone who's joined in. I think there's 600 and odd of you on right at this moment. If you've not subscribed to the Rangers Review YouTube channel, please hit subscribe. That's a big help to us. It's absolutely free. Hit the subscribe button, and that'll help us in terms of getting stuff to people. Actually, you know what, guys? We've had a super sticker from Charlie Hilling. So we've not had a question, but a super sticker. So thanks for that, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good stuff there. So yes. Anyway. If you want to sort of support what we do, you can sign up at the website. We've obviously got deep dive interviews, analysis, tactical stuff on there. Just absolutely loads of content every day. That's on the rangersreview.co.uk. It's £1 for the first 2 months and then £2.99 after that. When you consider nowadays you're paying a couple of quid for a paper, if you're talking about the high quality papers, then $2.99 is peanuts, and you get all the video content that we do, obviously, and support what we do in terms of the website as well. But listen, we're going to be back with absolutely loads of content over the next 3 days, and we're going to do this with all our Champions League matches. We're going to be in Napoli, 2 of us. We're going to be in Liverpool, 2 of us, and of course, as you can see, there's 2 of them in Amsterdam just now, soaking up the fantastic atmosphere. Strangely, it looks a little bit brighter where Josh is than where Derek is. I don't know how that's working out. Perhaps that's the effect of the Duvel on the skyline of Amsterdam. Who knows? Right, listen, we're going to call it a day. Thanks for everyone who joined in, and we will catch up with you throughout the day tomorrow. There will be tons of broadcast content coming down the pipe, so keep an eye out. We won't be on first thing tomorrow morning for obvious reasons. Given that we've just done this tonight, I would be going back over old ground. But throughout the day, after the press conferences, we will definitely be coming back to you with more content. So until then, thanks for watching.